Well, welcome one, welcome all to the Simufur Spa One-Off, our welcome event for new members and our experienced drivers alike to get thrown into the deep end. My name is Plasma. I'm joined with my co-commentator Paliku'i Dragon, who is going to be taking us through as we run through this amazing and honestly brilliant track to introduce all of our drivers to the series.
Yes, and given this one-off race, I mean, it's a perfect introduction for all new and old alike just to come together and, really just have fun at what's really a great circuit, Spa-Francorchamps here today. We're riding on board with Grim Lilith as Grim makes their way across the circuit, and I mean, we have impressive numbers today, Plasma. I think around, 50 drivers here all coming together. I mean, it's going to be one heck of a race today.
Yeah, we've maxed out our server at the 50 slots allotted, so we have a completely packed grid today, assuming we get maximum attendance for every single one of those has signed up. But it's really a race that I'm looking forward to because this is the first time in quite a while that we've really packed out one of our grids. Last time being one of our GT3 main championships, as we've had a couple kind of mixed groups coming off with our Am Champ and Silver Champ, iRacing, and everything like that. Of course, they haven't been the mainstay championship, so it's been quite a long while since we've had the grid of this size, and not just for the new drivers kind of getting overwhelmed by the amount of people here. I think some of our pro drivers might even get caught out by this as well.
Yes, and I mean, we have quite a bit of returning members here today. As a matter of fact, just in Silver Championship, I could see here we got Danak, Anka in there as well as some of the pros. I believe Fez Fox is in there as well, a commentator in this box, and you know, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do on track today.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's going to be really interesting for me to see who the new faces are. Are we going to have a changing of the guard with some of these newer drivers? Not all of them are new to ACC or league racing as a whole. This is just going to be their first kind of taste of what we have at Simufur and what our racing is like. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see who pops up and who's going to kind of be that surprise to kind of shuffle the top order of the grid, and also who's going to be able to make a name for themselves fighting in the ever chaotic midfield, as we've seen many, many times producing races that could go the 4-hour distance. Is these sprint races an hour long, they feel like a bit of a marathon in the car when you're sitting there battling someone side by side for the entire event. And so it'll be really interesting to see how some of these drivers handle that.
Oh, yes, of course. And just for our audience there watching the broadcast as we take a look at our timing tower for the first time, just to note, as you can see next to their numbers, what class they're actually in. As a matter of fact, I believe we have all four of our classes today: Pro, Silver, Am, and Nationals. And I mean, just the wide variety of both, skill and experience. I mean, it just makes for amazing racing.
Absolutely. And it will be one thing to note, too, is that our national class is more used as a provisional class here in Sydney for kind of getting an idea of where the pace is of a driver that we haven't seen before. Of course, we're going to have small hiccups in the practice session right now, little freezes as people join in and getting livery sorted. So apologies for those. It should be sorted by the time we roll into qualifying. But yeah, we use our national license as a bit of a provisional. Get an idea for where the paces of the drivers that are coming in, and allowing us to accurately place them just to avoid any sandbagging or making sure that we have the fairest race possible. Of course, now drivers are allowed to place themselves if they are confident in their pace with our available pace charts and other resources that we've used inside of Simufur. We've posted on our Twitter as well. We have plenty of ways to accurately determine where you're going to be, but of course there's drivers that aren't too confident where they're at, or maybe we want a little bit of extra info on, or encouraged to sign up as nationals, and then within a lap or two, an event or two, we will typically place them where we believe they are at pace-wise. So it worth noting that with our national, because national is normally a license you don't typically see. But yes, of course, I think our biggest group of nationals we've ever had coming into event. I believe we're in double digits even for the amount of nationals signed up for this event.
Yes, I believe so. Now, just a note for those also watching, I believe for our timing tower here, the Nationals are going to be mixed with the AMs. However, we will make sure to clarify that once we get into the end of each session, so, we know where everyone is. As you can see on the timing tower on the left-hand side of your screen, the pros are going to be indicated by the white border along with their number. So as you can see with Grim Lilith at 115 there, I think currently 33rd on the tower, as you can see on your left, that's a pro driver there with the white border there. Then if you look at MN underscore, who was a participant in our silver championship with Simufur. Of course, they're a silver driver. You can see that they have the gray border behind with their number there, number 21. And then, of course, anyone that's highlighted red there that's currently out on track, those are all the AMs. So, as Plasma did point out, it's just a good measure for us and everyone around the sort of experience, you have there and how we I suppose, categorize the drivers here for the skill and how they race. And it really leads to a very diverse league and setting that we have, and a community of all levels of racers. And you can come in and have fun with us.
Absolutely, and of course, it gives everyone their own championship battle. Of course, everyone wants to finish as high up on the overall as we see MNU getting a bit of a scare going through Blanchiment. Certainly, in the last place, you want to pick up a little bit of oversteer. But it allows you to battle for different championships, much as you would see in SRO and World Endurance Championship and so on and so forth. We have those driver classes, so people are competing with their skill group. And you have that battle for overall, but you have that battle with the people that are effectively matchmade against you with that license class. And while you will expect people to be within a certain mark of each other, we do see a little bit of a spread too, because class isn't just deterministic of your pace. We look at a little bit of racecraft and how well you can keep out of incidents and so on. So we end up with all of that in mind, tending to create a championship that is a little bit tighter, even if the pace spread's a little bit bigger. And it makes it very, very interesting to look over a championship season as opposed to just one event on its own. One of our drivers that, while didn't take a win last season in the Silver Championship, Newbie, who had been capped at consistency for the majority of the championship, finishing P2, 2, 2, and I believe after that started having a rough end of the season. But you could say that they didn't have the pace because they weren't winning races. But Newbie was there every single time in that BMW and able to hold a strong championship challenge until an unfortunate final round did take that away from them. But it leads to some, I guess, more drawn out excitement because you're able to keep that pressure on for an entire course of a championship rather than it just being a single person coming in, stomping the field in your class and, oh, well, nothing you can do if you're the rest of the 49 drivers that aren't the esports driver that came in and completely dominated the event.
As of course. And, talking about, just the nature of the one-off event, it's really just a good gauge of, even for the drivers, where they're at in terms of not only just their class, but their fellow competitors in the community. And, for us here at Simufur, it's a great way to get everybody out there. And, I may sound like a broken record here, but the number one thing about, sim racing and participating in this is having a good time. And, if all these drivers out here, all of them racing wheel to wheel, I mean, they're gonna make some moments here, and we can just only hope that they all have an amazing time here, and it's shaping up to be one of those races.
Absolutely, and I see quite a few names too popping up just to take us through our practice. Of seeing some of our nationals or maybe less experienced drivers, seeing Newt, F Spirit, Fleeky, unsure how to pronounce their name exactly, but I mean some of our drivers that are going to be shaking up the grid just a little bit. Thatcher as well, I believe, a new name to the grid in Simufur, another driver that's been able to creep into that top 10 of sorts, being able to just sneak in a little bit closer up to those top drivers. So that's going to be really, really interesting. Although we haven't seen everyone go out and set valid laps just as a product of people joining, me getting the freezes from custom liveries, and just not a lot of time with Spa being a very, very short track. That's quite the opposite. Very long track. So he's getting the tires up to temperature and so on. It's going to be quite a challenge. But As we tick things over, practice has ended, so now we're on to the meaningful sessions as we roll on out to qualifying, and we are led away by Azure Goat, who is been able to take that top qualifying position, or probably the most preferred qualifying position with clear track in front of you. Gonna be the first driver to be able to full send it into turn one and really feel out what conditions are in, how much grip's gonna be out on that track.
Yeah, and right now, it's getting those temperatures in those tires, making sure everything is in the right window. Really just preparation coming out of your outlap, trying to get the best lap you possibly can. Now, as far as I understand for this race, because we have so many drivers out on track, I believe overtaking is not going to be permitted during, I believe, outlaps or in laps, if I'm not mistaken, and that blue flag rules do apply. We love seeing racers go at it, especially setting their hot laps, but also, keeping it safe out there. Yes, these are digital cars, but you really want to follow the spirit of motorsport, and that's what we strive for here.
As the great Jimmy Broadbent once said, the cars might not be real, but the racing absolutely is. So we want to be treating them as if they're real motorsport. We obviously don't want people crashing each other out for no reason and just causing havoc. But of course, no overtaking permitted on outlaps or flying laps. But if you are shown the blue flag, you are required to move out of the way. So if you see a driver invalidate a lap and there's someone behind them, they need to move out of the way. If you see them on their outlap and they pull out in front of another car, well, they are going to be shown that blue flag and required to get out of the way. But nonetheless, we roll on and get ready to go. Coming out of the final corner, Azure's going to take us through a lap of this beautiful Spa-Francorchamps as you run down to turn one, a very, very short run. Hard on the brakes around that 100-meter board, and very deceptively late turning. Really got to get all that camber to help the car be pitched into the corner and get turned in deep inside of that corner, get a good run out up to the brilliant and famous Eau Rouge Radion complex. A soft left into a hard right, careful of the curb, a little bit taken from that Aston Martin, and then let the car run all the ways out to that right-hand side. You could see a little bit of tricks going on with that pit exit, but you want to focus eyes forward to less columns as you're going to be hard on the brakes right around the start of the curbing here and tip the car in, but don't compromise that left-hander. So bring the car back down because you need to get over to the left and set up for the right-hander in Malmedy. It's almost flat-out right-hander, a little bit of curb. Car's going to bounce around as you then rush down to Bruxelles. Hard on the brakes, but let the car nose in off camber, just waiting for the car to rotate forever and ever, and then hard on the throttle to get the rear end to come around. Then the amply named no name or speakers corner, a gentle left, but it's deceptively tight, very easy to invalidate a lap there as we get ready for the double of left of Pouan, or double gauche as it is amply called by the locals, and it's going to be tight to the inside and just keeping the car in, struggling with understeer the whole way through. But as you're able to piece this together, then the fast right left of Piff Path, but seemingly later Apex, always trying to prioritize that left-hander immediately after, almost never feeling like you can get this sequence of corners right. Then Stavlo, quick right-hander as we toss it in, eat all of the curb inside and outside, and Stavlo too needing to get the car to tip in and run all the ways out. Careful of another off-track opportunity there if you rush wide of that curb. And of course, the run up to the famous Blanchimont corner where we saw a little bit of an incident in practice. This is going to be flat out in our GT3 machinery, but it's not going to be comfortable. You got to get it in early, use that camber, and let the car slide a little bit and run all the ways out. Then you tip up to the bus stop, hard on the brakes, the final challenge that seems to ruin every single lap. Quick, all the ways up over the inside curb, a little bit wide from Azure, but able to set up that final corner and then hard on the power. Straight line to the flag stand. Very short run to that next position and able to set the first lap. Our first benchmark to beat is going to be a 29.8 from Azure. And now we're going to see where this traffic is going to be a little bit tricky because Azure's not allowed to overtake these cars in front of them as they have started their first flying lap. So he's going to have to slow down and actually create a gap to these cars behind, perhaps even let other cars by just to be able to find a gap. And that's going to be the real challenge for many of our drivers here in this qualifying.
Oh, as there's a little bit of an incident there, I believe. Oh, a couple of the drivers getting a little bit of contact almost with Azure trying to get by. And as you were saying, with the tricky part of traffic. That's what you have to deal with. As I believe Saber, in the meanwhile, actually set just 0.3 of a quicker time with the, I believe that was a 2:19.4, and oh, Cairo setting a 2:19.7, just barely above Azure. There's, we're taking a look at them, but yeah, I believe we can already see the traffic start to play out. I think Azure's backing out and is going to have to wait for another lap there. Oh man, it just, when you put 50 drivers on the track, things happen. Here we go.
Absolutely, and I mean, there's not really any bigger Grand Prix track than Spa-Francorchamps, so a very, very interesting challenge for many of these drivers. It might even be a matter for many of our drivers of just having one complete lap. It would not see much of a surprise for me, so you might even see many of these drivers fueling for the full 20 minutes of qualifying and going out for the entire stint, just trying to find a space in traffic and seeing if they can set a flying lap. But I do believe that overtake was assisted much by the fact of the incident in Radion, of course, sending both of those cars into tank slappers and they getting stopped because of that and then killing all of their momentum.
Yeah, no,
very, very interesting indeed.
This weekend, it's surprised right now. I mean, we have Thatcher here setting also a 2:19, I believe, 9. So we've got old and new up there today, and it's looking very interesting so far.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting for sure. One of our drivers that is interesting to take a look at, Cairo, is already up 1 second on their lap time. Remember, they had set a 2:19.7, and now they're rolling through Stavilo too. So they're looking at a massive improvement on their lap time here, and unsure who that is directly in front of them.
Let's see, I believe that's a 148 car. That is Paula, actually, in front. Oh, this is the...
Danny's going to be pushing to try to get close to the rear wing there, but that's going to be a little bit of dirty air for the number 44, as it looks like the 148 is going to be setting up for their next lap. Will this be an improvement? Yes, it absolutely will be for the 44, but is it enough? And of course it is, a 2:18.7, pushing them 7/10 clear of the rest of the pack so far, but it's only the start of qualifying. We have 12 minutes yet to go, and many of these drivers are only just now getting their tires up to temperature and pressure, so I expect that time to fall even further.
Yeah, and moving down to AM class right now, we have Zephyr right here with, I believe, a 2:22.1, currently leading behind. I believe the next is Vex with a 2:23.5, so almost a second and a few tenths ahead of the next person by.
Yeah, quite a large margin, but again, I think those times are going to fall down once we see everyone start spreading out. I'm keeping eyes on my track map and timing screen. I'm seeing most of our drivers start to break apart rather than being in the big clumps, people having their own incidents and having to recover from spins, let people by, and so on and so forth. It's starting to open things up a little bit more. Of course, that first lap is always going to be the most chaotic when everyone's just trying to get themselves settled and figure out where they're at on track. And of course, get into a rhythm before you really start to push these cars to their absolute limit. So I think the final 10 minutes will be very, very impressive here for most of our drivers, because they're going to be able to get multiple second improvements now that they're no longer going to have to worry about another car directly on their nose.
Yeah, and just if you take a look right now, we have so many here on the spread. You could take a look at the top few times in the 2:18s and 2:19s. Of course, a few of them are going to come down, and we're going to get some more to catch. But if you take a look at the silver and AM class, we're looking at around 2 minutes 20 seconds lap, 2 minutes 21s. And and fall all the way down from there, given how you manage traffic, if you get a good lap in. And it's one of the fun and almost unpredictable things about qualifying here. It's the fact that you could have the pace to set such a fast lap like Cairo did, and yet if you get caught up in traffic, that all goes out the window, and you have to settle for whatever the best lap you can pump in at that time is. And it's real indicative of almost a little bit of luck if you can catch a little bit of the draft from traffic and get a good time without having to be slowed by the car in front. There's so many factors that you have to try and figure out in qualifying, And the factors become even more prevalent when there's so many cars.
Yeah, of course, traffic management becomes a skill on its own, but normally that is akin to the endurance drivers and the multi-class drivers that you would see over, maybe you'd see a GT3, GT4 sprint race here on ACC that you'd get some traffic management, or of course you get the 6, 9, 12, and 10-hour or 24-hour races that you might have to deal with some traffic management. Many of these drivers, traffic management is not going to be something they're familiar with in qualifying of all things. So it's going to be a real test of seeing how these drivers deal with that stress of suddenly having to drive off pace in qualifying and still keep those tires in such a tight window that they're going to be able to give the grip that they're asking for once they try to throw this car around at maximum pace. But looking through the order, I mean, I'm seeing 1 second, 2 second, even for one driver, a 4-second improvement on all of our times here. So I think people are starting to sort themselves out and get comfortable with the gaps that they need to run. This is certainly something that's going to be unusual for the majority of our grid.
Yes, and it's not something that, as you mentioned, everyone is used to. Those that are maybe more experienced with sim racing, your, set of course, Competición, which is the simulator they're on here, you can have that traffic management and endurance races, but you can't really always translate that into qualifying, because the difference there is in endurance, you're mainly trying to get through there with a decent pace with the car that you have. In this instance, you're trying to set the fastest lap against everyone else's. Whoa, I see someone is pulling off behind, I believe, Zephyr there, maybe just resetting, getting ready for another run. But going back to endurance racing, it's not something that happens in 15 minutes.
No, absolutely not. Many times I've seen an endurance race, a faster car might sit behind someone for a couple corners if they know they're in a bad spot, and they'll lose a lot of time for trying to go for an overtake. So it is a skill that is maybe being tested to its absolute limit here. 50 cars in qualifying, typically this is a circumstance where we would see many of our drivers and going out in class-specific qualifying. We saw Cairo going a little bit deep there. Imagine just missing their brake marker and having to wait for cars to come back. But jumping on board with Azure here, who is actually, I believe, looking at their lap delta, I think on an outlap here. I'd imagine so, as they're 3 minutes and 40 seconds into their lap, so I'd struggle to see where they would be at that pace on track, knowing the pace of Azure. So about the outlap here, P3 for Azure right now, and it's going to be a little bit of traffic directly in front of them from what I can tell. And I believe that is the number 9 of spin records. So one of our new drivers directly in front of them. Azure's going to be opening up that gap just to try to make sure they don't catch them by the end of the lap here. And this is once again where that skill comes in. You see Azure setting up on the right-hand side of the track to get the best run out of this final corner. Open that gap up a little bit. This is going to be very, very close for Azure, I think, in terms of having a car directly in front of them and possibly even causing them to back up by the end of the lap here. We'll see. That gap does seem big enough for the pace that I would be used to, but we never really know with many of these drivers not able to set their representative pace so far.
Yeah, and we actually take a look a little bit further down. I believe that's Blumalt there that I believe set the quickest lap in AM so far with a 2:19.5. A very respectable time, beating out almost the entirety of the silver class.
I believe that is also one of our national drivers, actually.
So, gotcha.
Blum, having been part of our community for quite a while, but never actually been able to take part in any of our ACC series. So good to see a new but familiar face in the grid, and that Porsche 992, such a beautiful car, not biased at all, but of course a beautiful machine just being thrown around the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, which is a very tricky car in the Porsche, I might add. It is traditionally never been a good track for the Porsche, a little bit stronger now than it used to be. Now it doesn't have the power deficit that it used to, so you can strap on a little bit more downforce. But nonetheless, that rear engine layout, you have to wrestle this car around this track. But this corner Stavolo, Blanchimont, and even the bus stop just feel wonderful in this car. The fact that the rear end will just swing around and just give you all that rotation for free, and then the front end will just chip into the corners. You can take a little bit of the curbs and roll up on them, and the car just takes them beautifully. It's one of my favorite cars by a long shot, not just because I compete with it, but of course just, I mean, the sound of it. Easily the most amazing sounding car in the sim, bar none.
Oh, yes, absolutely gorgeous. As we're actually going to go hop over to Saber, who is, I believe, 3/10 up, setting a flyer right now. Oh, goodness gracious. We'll see if he can hold it. It's looking like further improvements coming here, and you can see the track is definitely starting to improve. Also recently getting the fastest lap, I believe a lap ago over Cairo, and yeah, it's up in the pro spot, not to be outdone. Just a lot of competition there going on, especially getting that top spot. And also not to forget as well, as we're going to pop down to Worshel here, you know, the silver course as well. Worshel, well, was the fastest up until Dipping Sauce, I believe, set a time of 2:19.3. So Worshel's going to try and work and get that top spot back.
It's going to be quite a challenge. I mean, I want to go back to Saber, who you're talking about before as well, who it's an 18.2 is their fastest lap that they beat out Kyle for, and they're up so far. Those 3/10 that you talked about, that's a further improvement on that 18.2, but this traffic directly ahead of us could see that getting spoiled, depending if Saber catches them too quickly, or if they're under blue flags, he might be able to sneak by, but very tight for Saber, and I think that's a little too deep. That might be that lap time profit gone for the number 523.
That may be, and yeah, it looks like it. That right there coming very wide into that tight chicane. You're not gonna improve that way, but just that's qualifying traffic for you. That's how these sessions work.
It's a challenge. That car in front of them actually was blue flagged, so maybe a little bit tentative on getting out of the way for those blue flags, but that is unfortunate. Nonetheless, the result is the same. The 523's qualifying attempt there is invalidated, so quite unfortunate, but I see green down the entire order right now. Through from 1st to 21st, I only see 2 drivers that are not improving right now. And I believe both of those are on outlaps. So this is going to come down all the ways to the wire. I see another driver a little bit further down with a 1-second improvement. I see one of our drivers that's getting ready to knock on the door of the top 10. Second improvement. Another driver that is in the top 10, 2 of them even. Actually 3 now looking at it, 5/10 or more improvement. All over this grid we have improvements. We have Azure at 5/10, was 8/10 previously, and they came around, I believe, just set another lap of a 18.792, missing out on P2 by only 700ths of a second. 600ths of a second. I can't do math. It is a little bit too early for me. I know it's a little bit earlier for you, but I'm going to take that excuse and run with it.
I don't know who to follow right now. Everyone's improving. I don't know who's gonna be where coming at the end of this. We have 1:30, so whoever's not already out, most likely this is gonna be their last lap here. It takes about 2 minutes and 20 seconds to get around this course. Whoever can get by, I believe they do get one more lap if they don't hit the checkered flag. So Saber, as we're watching here, he's up 2/10 coming into the chicane. Oh, again, traffic there, but I think they're going to get out of the way. Let's see if Saber can hit their marks. Coming through, 2 hits, 1 on the right, 1 on the left. Good track out, gets a good push, and is it going to improve? It is to a 2:18.1. Don't see the sub 2:18s yet, but they'll get one more lap to try and improve, and now it's up to Cairo to respond. I see Cairo is up around 3/10 from their time, but that's still not close to Saber's, and now we can see all the positions changing again as everyone comes across the line.
Yeah, but Cairo is still gaining time throughout this lap. Still half a lap to go, and they're knocking on the door now. 6/10 improvement through the second sector split. So that could be a dangerous time now for Cairo. to be pushing up against Saber. I mean, right
Oh.
now, if Cairo finished this lap right now, they would be pulled by a 10th of a second.
Yep.
So this is currently very, very dangerous territory for Saber's lap time for that provisional pole position. But look directly ahead. That could be a slower car that could impede this lap. So very, very tense moment for Cairo to be able to try to finish this lap as we're going to go hard under the brakes of the bus stop. Nose diving down, pushing into the ground.
Oh, he's going to park it on the apex. Oh, makes contact.
Is that going to be enough time lost to protect Saber's time, though? Cairo had a lot of time. Time is in 18.4. That was their lap.
Oh,
that was
what a
multiple tenths of a second loss just from that traffic, and that was blue flags directly ahead of them that actually cost that lap. As we roll back down the grid, this is Fez Fox in the number 86 Porsche that is 4 tenths up already through the first sector split. We'll take a look once they get to the second sector, but currently sitting on a 219.3, so we need to see a 1.2 second improvement here from Fez to see if this is going to be any kind of challenge for pole position.
Maybe not for pole position, but definitely, ooh, looking a little squirrely coming through there, but just, it's going to be definitely an improvement. Oh, he's up 8 tenths and still improving 9 tenths. Oh, but he invalidates the lap, going a little too wide. Oh, what a heartbreak. It was looking so good almost at the end, and then now we jump with MN underscore here up about 5 tenths here. This is to improve their position past the top 10 in the silver class. Let's see if they can hit their marks here coming to the chicane and improve enough, and how many spots they can improve. He's up almost a second, and when he crosses the line, we'll see where he ends up. Oh, he ends up in 5th. What an improvement from MN underscore to take the top of silver class.
Yeah, pipping off Fez Fox from that P5 position, but further down the order, we have Sarah behind as well, and Katie Timberfox, who are both on flyers right now. Saber up over a second through those first 2 sectors, and that's going to go up to a further improvement of 2 seconds and putting them P3 from P20. So Sarah behind able to get 1 clean lap, and that lap was able to put them onto the provisional podium.
My goodness, so much going on. I can hardly keep to it. Wow, what a finish to qualifying. I did not expect this today. Wow.
Yeah, that's, oh boy, a challenge for all of our drivers. So, I mean, we saw Fez Fox. Fez is tempting to be a driver who we see at the top of the grid, no questions asked, and who is now going to be starting from the third, or actually the 4th row, who is going to be a very interesting challenge coming in from one of our pro drivers, previously GT3 series champion as well. So way out of position, and that's going to be something Fez might be kicking himself for, because that was a big improvement. That was looking like that could have been pole position, but nonetheless, pole position goes to your Saber Kitsune, who is going to be taking that number 523 Porsche all the ways to the front row, challenged, of course, by none other than the number 44 Mercedes, driven by Cairo, who we saw were the real protagonists of qualifying, and then followed up by that absolutely barnstormer from Sarabine right at the end. I mean, out of nowhere is the easiest way for me to put that, because I mean, I would not have expected Sarabine to go from P20 seeming to struggle on the track a little bit, nowhere to just, I mean, the qualifying podium. I mean, what more is there to say?
I couldn't even see them on my timing sheet before it came to the end of the qualifying session, and all of a sudden, bam, there's Sarabine. It's absolutely incredible. Wow, I wish I could go back and see that lap. It must have been absolutely incredible, and a flyer. And, you know, I think a part of that is everyone was pulling off of track as well, because it was already past the end of qualifying. Might have been one of the last ones, I believe, was the last one to cross the line to end the session. And so that's just having a clean air and the clean track. You just see the improvement. You're in 3rd place.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine Sarabine was thinking anything other than pole position. Unfortunately, not much to get all the ways up to the top, but without a doubt, a very strong challenge from Sarabine. Of course, looking through the order, too, I mean, I think it's going to be a really interesting situation for the race. I'm looking at speed traps all the ways from 258Ks all the ways up to 273. And we're looking at a 15K difference for our cars here. So race trim coming in here. That's going to be very, very interesting from all of our drivers and just trying to sort themselves out throughout the race. Of course, we look at our class qualifying, MNU underscore taking that pole position in silver class, right ahead of Dipping Sauce, who for the first time I think in Simufur is deciding to take a modern GT3. I just want to point that out because you don't see this often. This man's always in a Jag. He's always in some car that was probably made before the 1990s, but in an M4 GT3, and he puts himself P2. What more is there to say?
Yeah, then we take a look at AM here. I mean, Katie Timberfox, of course, you know, taking it there, and then Newt followed in second in the AM class, then Zephyr. I mean, it just, we got races going on all over the place, and then not to be outdone by the national Blumont here, who manages to put himself, you know, I believe, what, top 10 overall. So it's gonna be.
To see that he's not, he's only the only qualified national in there. I mean,
Yeah.
we have 12 nationals on the grid. Just to take us through those while we talk through this gridding session, we're looking at a Casp, Spin Record, Oro Zephyr, Fox, Katie Timberfox, who actually is a national driver, but for some reason is thrown into the AM grid, which, interestingly enough, is, I guess, ACC being ACC.
I guess.
Melody Wolf, Vex, Parsival, Blumhout, Zezzers, F-Spirit, and Dust, all of our national drivers throughout the grid.
Right.
There, as we see a Bentley doing a wheelie. Quite impressive that they're managing to hold that for so long while stationary. I will give them credit to that.
Yeah, no, very much so. And as we wait here, oh, apologies for that. We're going to go ahead and just go through our grid here today. Ooh, we're having a little bit of issue with that right now, but we're just going to go ahead and actually go through each of the vehicles here today, starting with, of course, Saber here, our pole sitter today, followed by Cairo, rounding out your first row here. Then Cerebine with that impressive final qualifying lap there, as they are next to Azure Goat with fourth place. As we saw when we were riding on board with them, they set a decent lap to put them right above in the top 5, and then rounding out your top 5, Grim Lilith, as you see there in the 115, beautiful Mercedes there. Then on top of your silver class, MN underscore in 6th place, followed by Fez Fox with just that heartbreak of an invalidation lap in qualifying, as then Dipping Sauce rounds out in 8th, Thatcher in 9th, and then of course our qualified national Blumhout in rounding out your top 10. Whew. Now coming up to one of our Bluey silver drivers, Suzuka Shark there in 11th, with right next to them Denak. Oh, this seems like a familiar position here for a silver championship.
Yeah, certainly. He's right. Nose to tail, without a doubt.
Nose to tail, without a doubt. And Worshel, 13th, followed by Katie Timberfox in 14th. 15th with that Sergo and their nice 58 Ferrari. And then Luna, number 320 there in their McLaren. Newt, followed by Blade Wolf, 17th and 18th there respectively. And that Aston Martin there, then Randomy, 19th, rounding out your top 20. Ares Volpez in, I believe, BMW. In their usual BMW out there, and of course, rounding out your top 20. Anka a little bit further back on the order in 21st. Usually not used to seeing that with him. He's usually up there with Denat, and followed by Paula and their 148 Mercedes there in 22. Litz Kits there, 23rd, followed by Zephyr, and 24th there in their nice black Lamborghini livery. Oh, that's looking really nice there. Ralph, of course, ever so the great artist there in 25th, followed by Oro in 26th. FS Spirit in, I believe that's a Bentley, one of the few Bentleys on the grid in 27th, followed by Vex, in their number 22 Ferrari. Then we have Quinn, part of the KMA team, in 29th, followed by Wolf and Foxdale, rounding out your top 30. And then going to the further back of the grid, Fane qualifying 31, and their number 3, Aston Martin there. Morrico in their McLaren, newcomer to the league, I believe, along with Fleecy, both in McLarens there. 34th, Seppi, followed by Gin Fof, or is that Jin Fof?
Jin Fof.
Jin Fof, yes. Please excuse me for that. followed by the 815 Soarin' Landfall McLaren 36th, and 37th Parsifal the Racing Wolf. Zezor's in 38th, followed by Flip Flop Dog in 39th. And then rounding out your backfield here, Fox in 40th, followed by Rally and Casp 41st and 42nd respectively. Hubble in 43rd in their BMW, followed by Dust in 44th with a GTR of all things, and Melody also with a GTR. And then we have Snow Brunch 46th in, I believe that's a Lexus. Then Spin Record and the number 9 McLaren there, as you see, followed by Page, and then rounding out your field is Snowy in 49th, and that is your grid today here for the one-off race at Spa-Francorchamps.
Yeah, I believe Page too is the only Ferrari that is not a 296. So I brave soul. Of course, the GTR is another group of brave souls, filed in by the Lexus of Zezor's Snow Brunch. Very interesting pick, but also Rally, I believe, is using the Evo 1 Lambo. I believe they were the one I had a conversation with earlier in the week about being the brave soul in the Super Trofeo, effectively, because that thing has a rear locking to no end. Absolutely insane machine. But I really look forward to seeing them handle that car and just throw it around the track. As we see, quite a bunched up grid. 50 cars, or 49 cars, sorry, are going to be rolling into Eau Rouge Raidillon for the first time at speed. Just a reminder for those that watch any kind of racing at Spa, we will not be using the pit straight. We launch coming out of the final corner down the endurance straight, as they would for the Spa 24 hours and similar endurance events, just as is procedure from ACC. Making sure things stay a little bit cleaner, but I'm not sure how much better Eau Rouge Raidillon is compared to La Source of all places.
This is gonna be one heck of a start. I am hoping for the best of all these drivers, but as we know, going too wide in Eau Rouge and Raidillon never really ends well. But we're gonna see with this many cars. I think it's inevitable. I just hope we don't see the dreaded 3 wide.
Yeah, I mean, there has been words of caution expressed to our drivers, so we should see people being a little bit safer than maybe a full send championship battle on the final race of a championship, and so on and so forth. But if I was any of these drivers, I don't care what quality of field I am driving with, if it is SRO, if it is just a public server, I would be terrified with this many cars on the grid. Additionally, I believe one car is in the pits, the number 22. Unable to see who that is, but unfortunate for them, they'll be starting right on the tail of the pack once everyone rolls on by.
Oh, I believe that's Vex. I think that's Vex in the number 22. I'm seeing them, showing up as in pits. But anyways, Plasma, do us the honors. Run us off to the start here as they line up.
Yeah, of course. No time to worry about the car in the pits as we are side by side, line astern, as the engines slowly roll down the downhill from La Source to Eau Rouge Raidillon. The green light has taken over, and the drivers are flat out into Eau Rouge, into the right-hander, and setting up for Raidillon as we look for everyone to keep it clean. 2 by 2 line astern all the way to the back of the grid, and it looks like we are mostly clean throughout the order.
Oh, there's an incident back there.
Top of Eau Rouge, and top of Raidillon, and I think a couple drivers have been picked up by that. Unsure who exactly was collected. It looks like maybe we have 6 or 7 cars collected.
Oh, maybe. It looks like it. I'm trying to take a look here. It looks like a lot of the field down there, as I believe Azure also got caught up in something later on. Oh, we're going to have to look back at that, as my timing screen is absolutely lit up with what happened there up at Raidillon. We're going to have to take a look back at that. But meanwhile, as we take a look at the launch through, Saber has gotten through right now. So he's looking good. The top, I believe, 5, other than, I believe, Azure, because Azure fell back. He's looking good as MN underscore actually improves to 4th.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very big improvement for MNU underscore. I believe started 11th, was it 10th or 11th? So big, big improvement from that driver. Actually, no, sorry, they started P6. That's right. They had pipped Fez Fox right at the end. But
Yeah, I believe
big, big
so.
improvements throughout the order for some of these drivers. Seeing all the
Oh,
ways up.
meanwhile, MN underscore's falling back. Something must have happened. Ooh, trying to get to him right now. Oh, man, he's fallen further back the grid. As a matter of fact, down to 24th. Oh, what a heartbreak for MN underscore. We couldn't even see that. I think he just went off track and just couldn't recover it.
Yeah, quite possibly. The Mercedes not taking too kindly to bumps if you start rolling over those bumps in the grass. So that could be very dangerous for MNU underscore's race. But first lap done, and in your top 10 is going to be Saber Kitsune, followed by Kairos Sarabine. Fez Fox able to get up 2 positions, followed by Dipping Sauce, who's stolen a couple positions as well. And we also see Grim Lilith, who's fallen back a position, followed by Thatcher, one of the newcomers, followed immediately by another in Plumlau. Denak is going to be filling out P9, and Suzuka is going to be moved up to P10, and I'm followed up by one of our national drivers, P11, Katie Timberfox, able to take that P11 spot. And the chaos has only just begun as we have 1 hour of this to go. Dipping Sauce already being able to put on a challenge, as you see in the foreground of your screen, chasing down Fez Fox in that BMW, but that BMW not known for its top line speed, and that Porsche may be struggling or maybe pushing a little bit further ahead than its predecessor, the 991.2 would have been.
Yeah, just a
that's
little
going to
bit.
be a battle to look at throughout this race.
We're going to go back and I think take a look. I believe this is right after Radler on that huge incident real quick while they battle it out. Let's go ahead and see what happened. Oh, as we can see, they're all filing up Radion here. Oh, there's just a huge pileup up ahead. Everyone's just slowing down. I believe that's... Oh, goodness, multiple cars there. You can see them scattered on the track. Almost a war zone. Wow. That's most unfortunate there for all those drivers involved.
Yeah, of course. Many of the drivers were briefed that was going to be a danger going up through a Rouge Radion. While there is the possibility of the red flag, it was only going to be reserved for seeing the majority of the grid. So only 5, or not 5 or 6, but maybe 7 or 8, maybe a little bit more cars wasn't going to trigger that. It did not seem. But nonetheless, many of these drivers now with either recovery drives or quite a challenge ahead of them as they try to roll through this Spa-Francorchamps. Let's see, 5 drivers in the pits. Actually, no, 4 drivers in the pits who are going to be trying to pit for repairs and not stick it out to that pit window, which I would highly recommend if you were a driver that picked up damage and didn't get a meatball, that you stay out. You gotta suffer through it. That way you only make 1 pit stop during this race, because that endurance pit is a 1-minute pit lane, and that's just if you roll through it. The fact that you're going to have to stop and get repairs, depending how many repairs you have, that could put you a full lap down here almost.
Yeah, and you can't, well, the thing is that with the multiple incidents we have, there may still be racing for you, but in all likelihood, what you got to do is you just got to stick it out. With, again, this many cars in track, you never know what's going to happen. So you just have to get back out there and just see how much you can make up. You know, recovery drives are tough, but, you know, with all the incidents that's happened, you have to make sure you can capitalize on anything that might go up. I see Sarabine. Yeah, Sarabine down the order. Sarabine coming out. Oh, might have had an incident right out of Radion, just waiting and falling further down a 15th, 16th, just trying to rejoin safely. Oh, might have
damage on that Ferrari too on the front end of it. I think there was contact involved with Sarabine there. And that's most unfortunate. Your surprise qualifier, who was able to stick at P3, is now falling down the order, is almost down into P23. Actually, P24 is our timing screens update. It's going to be the biggest disappointment for them as they put in such a good qualifying effort right at the end. And now look at cars hounding them down. I think there might even be a meatball here for Sarabine.
Yeah, it just doesn't look like something happened to the steering there. I don't know if it's suspension related, and you just see a Constantino effect behind as we see a couple of cars making contact, trying to stay out of the way, but, you know, see Sarabine being safe, but, yeah, they're just going to have to crawl that back to the pits. Just an unfortunate set of circumstances for them.
quite possibly, or maybe even just staying a little bit safe from the rejoin. It does look like they're a little bit better up the pace, but struggling with that understeer. Most unfortunate as we want to take a look at some of our battles. A 4-car battle directly up ahead with, I believe, Pajay Kai or Kasai and Soren Landfall, who are trying to duke it out, followed by Jin and Bliskit. They're going to be trying to challenge each other a little bit further up the road from Sarabine, who's now going to have probably the best seat in the house. Oh, but no, I think that Ferrari is just, oh, it's struggling. The front end just doesn't seem to be working at all. But you're going to see a couple of these cars just strolling on by. But Sarabine would be much maligned to probably try to get that back to pits. It looks like it might be a possible meatball from Sarah. Quite unfortunate from, again, our P3 qualifier, who would have been so happy with that event.
Yeah, it would have been, but it's just unfortunate. You could clearly see there's damage on that car. Sarabine's just having all sorts of trouble trying to get that to work in their favor. It's just not happening.
Yeah, struggling to get back to the pits and just staying out of everyone's way. I mean, certainly the last thing you wanted from the top of the grid, and that's going to have seen them drop from P3 to now dropping 36 positions from their starting position to the grid here. And yeah, we're going to see, unsurprisingly, running into the pits here and just trying to get that car back into for service. I have to imagine that there was some kind of meatball for the for the number. Not the number, number 57, Paliku'i. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And just trying to survive the race it's really a skill to survive that first lap. I mean, a big bit of understeer coming in from that GTR, a car that typically doesn't want to turn that well. Certainly not wanting to turn any better when you have that much front end damage coming into that GTRs. We're going to see them getting challenged by the Porsche. I believe that's going to be, is that Quinn that is challenging them? Yes, Quinn that is able to actually get past them. So starting to make their move up the grid after, I believe, an incident that they had at the start of the race. And actually, this is the group that we would have seen just trying to survive after having contact right at the top of Radion there. So most of these drivers just trying to recover what they can, but still having some battles in their own little pocket of cars back here. But as we roll through, we're gonna see again that actually I believe Quinn has the 991.2 Porsche. So this being the Porsche that we talked about as a little bit more deadly, I think is the best word to use for this.
Yeah, it's more unstable, I would say, as far as cars go, especially with a 992. It's more the weight distribution. It's, as you can see, coming out of the corner, just struggling a little bit. That's the characteristic of this car. What do I say? The drivers say it's very deadly on corners.
Yeah, it's very edgy to start. That's for certain. It wants to just keep rotating, and it will over-rotate on you. It is a rather tricky car to get on top of. Especially with how trimmed out it needs to be, as we saw a car going off there and a BMW immediately behind.
I believe there might have been an incident, more contact there, but I wasn't. Yeah, I'm unsure who that was as well.
Timing screens are telling me that was Hubble and possibly Casp. Yeah, just confirming that on my own side of things are the drivers involved. P38 now and P42, unsure where they were when that incident first happened, but very unfortunate seeing two BMWs come together there in Blanchimont. Very dangerous corner for two cars to come together as well. Because, well, simply put, if you get spun, there's a wall right on the inside. If you lose control, that wall on the outside comes up way faster than you think it should, because you're just going so fast and very easy to put it into the wall.
And it's, you know, we could just see coming out. I mean, look at that BMW. It is damaged. There must have been some sort of hit that must have occurred through there. Yeah, it's looking worse for wear, as you can clearly see.
Yeah, certainly not what you'd want to be looking at as a driver, seeing that hood flopping around and just, it's the last thing you could possibly want. If you have a little bit of a technical issue, just sort out really quick. Looks like we might be able to get that going. Yeah, just fighting with ACC a little bit. But as we roll through here again, Casp just rolling through it. Bruxel is trying to get the front end. That front end's really going to be struggling, though. BMW, not the most compliant machine, to say the least, when it comes to turning. And I'm sure the lack of aero right now is certainly not helping that. But they're doing a good job to hold Dust Melody, rallying them behind. And actually, I believe, are able to keep that gap mostly the same. But they definitely are losing a little bit of time with the longer corners like Pouan, where the front end aero is just giving up on them.
We're going to try and turn it back. And there was Quinn before, as we saw in the Porsche. She's doing all right there. And then we're going to jump on with Wolf and Foxdale right now, I believe, as they're in their Mercedes. Oh, it's the story of the day. We just see more damage, too. Look at the front end of Wolf in there. It's got some damage as well.
Yeah, a little bit of the hood also popped up, but that Mercedes does tend to want to turn in a little bit better. So good to see that 529 push up right underneath the rear wing of that Ferrari there, who I believe, going by my time screen, that is possibly a lap.
Ooh, it's coming in the braking there pretty hard on that braking point there. As we can see they're coming up, and they're in a little bit. I believe that's Vex and Parsifal right now that are together.
So Wolfen's actually the lap car, and this is we go side by side through a Rouge Radion. Parsifal is able to take that inside line, and now is going to carry that momentum. But this could see Wolfen sneak by as well on Vex as we roll up the main straight, the Kimmel straight. But look at that Ferrari start to stretch its legs on the McLaren, and it's going to be able to look up the inside of Lecombs here. So the space needs to be allotted and needs to be given as we roll in a little bit of a tap, and that's going to be Parsifal touching the inside or the outside corner of the Ferrari of Vex, and now has to worry about fending off Wolfen, who's going to be taking out that back side of the McLaren. It looks like that battle is going to be stretched out, but no, the Ferrari going a little bit deep as we see the McLaren now sneaking back in the inside of Bruxelles into No Name or Speaker's corner, and that's going to be shifting right back in favor of the 28.
I didn't think we'd be seeing a damn battle here, but there we have Percival and Vex duking it out, coming through the corners here. Wow, and we'll see if they can catch back up, but yeah, that was a decent battle between the two.
Yeah, the McLaren was able to take some opportunistic moments there and try to sneak on past. So very well held by the number 28 of Parsifal, who was able to get a couple positions back, or get that position back after losing it from the tap in Lacombe. But a little bit of a door banging. I mean, they like to see that in GT racing. Of course, we don't want people to be taken out, but some good hard racing always is nice to see, of course. But as we roll through here, just in front of this group of cars, I believe we have another battle too, with Raf trying to chase down Spin Record. Ooh, as we see a car losing it in the bus stop. That's Fleecy.
I think that's Fleecy.
Yeah, unable to keep the car pointed through the bus stop, perhaps taking a little bit of curve. That McLaren not too fond of the curbing here at Spa-Francorchamps, or really any track, to say the least. But of course, they were trying to chase down our battle right ahead of Raf and Spin Record up in P31, who are just going through a Rouge Radion, I think, or maybe just coming through a little bit after. But that's certainly going to be a little bit of damage to the confidence of that McLaren getting spun out there. As we roll up this Camel straight, you're going to have to take one more quick look away. Just and of course, technical issues. Gremlins always managing to sneak their way in. Just having to take one moment to pull away from the broadcast as we try to sort things out. Of course, tools are meant to be broken, and break they will. So just give us a quick moment as we roll through things. Try to get the sim back in order because it's, of course, going to be fighting us at the first opportunity you can. I mean, take a look at that beautiful Spa-Francorchamps circuit. 19 corners that are being covered by the drivers today, and covered at quite a bit of pace. Of course, we have our battles throughout the grid that we're trying to return you to. We see, actually, I believe, some battles in the top 5, another in the top 10 that we're going to try to jump in. We also see Fox and Blizzkit on our timing screens, who are 2/10 away as they roll through the grid. I believe they're coming up to Blanchimont right now, so quite a good possibility that we will see them diving in. But our battle up for P5 here is well underway as we see the Ferrari chasing down Dipping Sauce, the Ferrari of Thatcher. One of our newer drivers going to be taking the inside of Lake Almas. Both of them are going deep. Dipping Sauce able to get back into the inside, but both drivers have now lost momentum, and that's going to be dangerous for our BMW here, and this could be... No, the Ferrari actually having to fall back a little bit further, so a bit of a break coming back from Dipping Sauce there, who didn't get exposed for what was honestly a big mistake in how tight the top-end battle for our grid here. As we roll through, it looks like Thatcher's going to be just pulling that gap back together. So the arrow on that Ferrari seemingly unaffected by the dirty air of the BMW, who is able to right now just push closer and closer. The gap just closing up a couple of tenths every single time. And that's just leading to these cars... Just that front end of that Ferrari, the tires are going to be crying for help every second that they get closer, every tenth that they bring the nose up to the rear end of that BMW. They're going to be bleeding off more and more aero, just causing the front end to scream as we see a big slide from Thatcher coming through Stabilo too, able to keep it in order. But that's the worst place you could possibly have that. That's a lot of momentum loss, and we've already watched that gap grow from about 0.3 of a second to 1.2. So Thatcher going to be kicking themselves for that, but well held from the 102.
Yeah, Thatcher came in, I think, a little bit too tight coming to that turn. Looks like he got most of the curbing and a little bit of the grass. But as you can see here, I believe that's lap traffic number 99. Oh, gets a little tap, and the battle's back on.
Yeah, and lap traffic is just... It's going to be playing a big part in this race, and right now it's playing in Thatcher's favor as we see the GTR of, I believe, Dust, who is our other GTR driver, now is in that realm. Of course, Dipping Sauce is going to be asking for any help that he can get, as it looks like the BMW of Casp is now in the way, and that's going to push Thatcher just that much further back. Another high-speed section of the track where they're going to lose momentum, and that gap's open all the way up to 3 seconds. And Thatcher's going to be swearing inside of that helmet.
And Cass looks like they're having some trouble keeping it on the straight right now, going very slowly, it seems, as more cars are catching up to them, as we see Denak make their way by.
I do believe Cass probably just letting people buy on blue flags here, but with that much damage on the car, it does make it rather difficult to point the car somewhere it doesn't want to go, so can't be blaming them too much for that. Certainly just trying to survive until the pit window opens here in 20 seconds, so I'm sure they're going to be jumping for joy once they hear their crew chief come on the radio and let them know that that's open around the end of the lap here.
Yeah, and it's been rough for, it looks like, most of the drivers here. We've seen, as we've scrolled through, just a bunch of them had tons of damage. It's just really hard to do anything with that. But as we hear right now the call, the pit window has opened for the drivers, so now maybe some consolidation, as we'll see who decides to jump into the pits here.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to see all those drivers that have any kind of damage are immediately going to jump in. Of course, going up a couple positions for P1. We actually, Kairos closed that gap up to the Saber, who has been maybe losing a little bit of time with that Porsche up front. And that gap's now closed down to zero point 0.8 seconds, so we could maybe see a little bit of a strategy battle start to develop all the way at the front end of our grid here.
Yeah, I mean, there's Grim Lilith up ahead there. Their last lap being a 2:21.32, now a 2:19.5. So, the times are there, the pace is there. It's just now it's about working that gap, working that momentum through the corners and trying to keep it. As we can see, a couple of cars already going through the pit lane.
Yeah, and of course, I imagine most of those are going to be the drivers that have damage. So certainly the last thing that they could be wanting for certain. But of course, if we roll through here, we're going to be taking a look at Grim, who's actually kind of in a little bit of no man's land with 6 seconds in front of them, 2.2 behind. But that being said, it does appear that they are gaining on Fezbox quite substantially. About half a second per lap rate now, although they don't have the fastest lap overall. They are now setting some of the fastest laps of the grid in the later phase of this stint.
Yeah, and just looking at it right now, how the drivers are handling themselves, it's really going to be a matter of, can they keep pushing? Can they keep consistent? As that's really the name of the game for the guys up front. Staying consistent, staying within their, their abilities, and not overdoing it, especially if you have a good strategy in mind. Oh, we had a car to go off track there. I think that was Rally there, just pulling off there on the side, just making sure they let the cars go that are coming around.
I believe possibly having an incident there was Rally. Huan being a relatively tricky part of the track to try to get away with anything. Of course, very, very easy to lose the car there on entry, especially when we talked about the Lambo Evo 1 being a pretty tricky car for rear locking. Very easy to just lose the rear and not be able to carry that car out like you would want to. Having to straighten it up and make sure you don't put it into the wall. Of course, the outside wall, Puan being such a fast corner, very, very easy to just bin it right into it. And as soon as you put it into the wall outside of Puan, with how fast of a corner it is, your race is pretty much over right there.
Yeah, we have another car up ahead there. I believe that's Soren. It's just pulling off, and it's you got to give respect to the drivers that are out there, that are having fun. We have a few different races going on with the AMP class, the Silver class, and the pros right now, and just staying out of the way, respecting each other's races. That's what we like to see.
Absolutely, and of course, it's a very adds a lot of humility to be able to do that, because many of the drivers, they could just sit there and stay in the way for blue flags, most of them wanting to get out of the way and let people get on with their races, which much respected to those drivers doing exactly that. Of course, they have no obligation to our blue flags, just advisory, so they are sacrificing their own race for someone else's, or they're sacrificing a little bit of time just for one of the faster drivers to get by and just sit behind them, maybe learn a little bit too. So you can see a little bit of strategies to some of the drivers that might be uncomfortable in some areas, and trying to just learn a little bit from the faster car ahead of them.
Yeah, and it's really for almost everyone involved a learning experience. You come out here, you want to compete, and one of the big things you want to take away from it is, your fellow competitors, how they drive, and how you can improve your own driving. And for myself, as someone that also does sim racing quite frequently, as well as you do, as you'll know, you really want to learn from your competitors as much as you want to compete with them.
Yeah, it's certainly a place to build a little bit of networking, and of course learn from most of our drivers. Leagues, of course, normally tending to be a more friendly environment. Of course, we're a little bit more friendly here than say an esports league, and so a lot of people here, again, to learn, so not trying to do anything crazy. But we see Chiral starting to really put the pressure up on that 992 Porsche, the number 523, really seeming to struggle in terms of pace as we roll up over here, and that 44 is looking very, very fast. Danny had been gaining about a 10th per lap, but this lap he has absolutely put the burners on, and that 992 seems to really be struggling as we go hard underneath the brakes, and you can just see how on the limit these drivers are and how equally matched they are under braking with completely different machines.
Yeah, and you can see Saber almost going a little bit defensive there, holding off the line on the inside, coming into the chicanes, and coming to Eau Rouge and Radillon after La Source. We'll see if Sabre has to keep going defensive or if the exit speed will carry him through. I'm venturing to say it'll carry him through there, but really the question is afterwards to see what kind of speed they can carry and momentum through that long straight.
I would be sweating bullets right now knowing if I'm the Porsche looking in my mirror on this entire straight, because that's a very long straight for the Mercedes to make time with that 6.3 liter V8 rumbling down the Camel and going uphill here. All that torque just propelling it ever closer, but the Porsche able to hold its own with the benefit it got on traction initially through here. And once again, Danny's gonna have to settle through, but look at that Mercedes through the mid corner.
Oh.
Look how much more compliant it is as Danny is going to be trying to take a move around the outside of Bruxelles. This is a very tricky place to make a pass, and the 992 able to try to get itself in front, but now to the inside of No Name. Danny files back inside and a little bit of oversteer on the curb. Sabre able to breathe easy for half a second now, but coming into Pouhon, the challenge is not over because the Porsche has been struggling through this middle sector all day, and the Mercedes seems to be coming alive late in the stint here. As we roll on down the Fifth Ave, it looks like the Porsche able to put down power a little bit better. The Mercedes just washing back a tiny bit more, but look at this now through Fifth Ave, the right, the left, then tracking up to Stavolo. The Mercedes just gains, visibly gaining and more and just pulling up to the rear wing of that Porsche, and I think right now they could be towing that Porsche down the straight.
You can see how much more compliant the Mercedes is than the Porsche right now. The Porsche coming into that last corner looked like they were a little wide on the apex, and the Mercedes just able to cut through that line like absolute butter. Credit to Sabre, though. The corners before that looked like he parked it over, I believe that was Brussels, coming around to Speaker's corner and just managed to hold off Cairo for a lap, but with this much time and the pit window being open, I imagine strategy is going to play a huge part if Cairo can't get the move done.
Yeah, I'd be shocked to say it not play a part at 32 minutes remaining in this race. We're about halfway through that pit window, and I could see Danny or Cairo possibly pushing into the pits right away and trying to just sneak in an undercut, because that Porsche does seem to be struggling right now. But I wouldn't also be surprised to see if this Mercedes try to push that overcut. With how much that Porsche has been struggling late in the race, it could be a possibility that Cairo would try to push along on those tires and really abuse the advantage. But I think right now Sabre's just playing the track position game and just staying in the way as long as they can get away with.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the right thing to do right now. With Cairo, how it looks is Cairo's just pushing really hard on those tires, and you have to wonder if that's going to affect it, as we see Cairo looking on the inside, playing the mind games too, and that may affect Sabre coming through, but so far, Sabre holding staunch with his defense.
Yeah, and that Mercedes, look at it sliding through No Name corner there too. Just absolutely on edge as Danny wrings the neck of this Mercedes machine, tipping out maybe half a car wide just to get the over-under, get a little bit of clean air on the front end of that Mercedes to not lose as much time in the dirty air, and that might benefit them as we roll through Piff Path for one more time, just trying to get a little bit closer. Once again, that Mercedes looking at just closing up massively, and that could be an opportunity through Stavolo. Sabre's now tight, and Danny trying to go for maybe a little bit of an over-under. Now as we roll through Stavolo too, the overspeed could play a big difference here, but look at that Porsche just able to carry that momentum through Stavolo 2 that much better, scrub off a little bit less speed, and actually ends up with the speed advantage by the time they exit the corner.
And looking at, again, coming into Blanchiment, it's just that Mercedes is looking like it's on the attack. Porsche having to defend almost through all the corners there as they went through Stavolo. And I believe they're both coming into the pits at the same time.
Yeah, both drivers coming in as we have a driver slow in the pits, and actually Sabre snuck by and is using him to pick Danny, and Danny's now stuck behind. That could be a game changer by the time they roll out of the pits here.
What in the world?
With a pit lane overtake is able to sneak past and put a massive gap between the two now.
Oh, but now we have to see where the pit strategy lies, or what kind of fuel are they have to take, or if they're going to take tires. And it's, again, as you can see, this pit lane is long. It's absolutely a long stretch. I can't imagine how frustrated I would be going through this slow, knowing that the guy that's in the lead is right in front of me, but I can't catch up to him.
And physically, a barrier is in the way as we crossed that halfway mark of the race. 29 minutes left to go as both of these drivers are going to be coming in. So just past the halfway point of the race, we'll see who hits their marks a little bit better. But naturally, that gap is going to shift towards Saber, who's going to be benefiting from that. I mean, on the fly thinking, to say the least, and able to open up that gap just that little bit more as well. But very smart thinking coming in from the 5-2-3. Of course, some of our other battles throughout the grid, looking at Flip Flop Dog, who is fighting Zizors up in P15, where they add on track. Coming through Stavilo 2 right now on to Blanchimont, as we've the gap sitting at about 0.7 seconds. Looking similar for MNU underscore chasing down Raf at the end of the Kemmel Straight, as well as Cerebine is fighting Vex into the bus stop. So we have quite a few battles going on track here throughout the later part of the grid, as well as Snowbrunch, it looks like, chasing down Quinn, who is also chasing down Parsival going into the bus stop right now. So there are going to be a lot of drivers coming around in the general vicinity of our leaders here, our effective leaders, who are able to push in front. But actually, a driver who's snuck in front, I think now, is Fezfox, just in front of them, who is snuck in between Saber and Chiral.
Yeah, and Fez looks, I saw him coming through the straight as Chiral was coming out of the pit. Just a lucky gasp there as Fez just managed to push it so that now he's net a position from that.
Absolutely, and it's worth noting that Fez has completed his mandatory pit stop. This is not just he pit early and he just happens to be back here. This is his mandatory pit stop. So now a new lead challenger is going to emerge, and we're going to see two of the Porsche machines start to challenge each other for this overall race victory.
You can see up front there on your screen there, that is Saber in the blue Porsche ahead of the white and blue Porsche, the Simufur car here at Fezfox. And of course, this is for net lead now. They're 7th and 8th, but oh, we got the number 99 here. Ooh, nearly pushing Fezfox wide through Stavilo, but Fezfox managing to hold the position there and holding the time there. Well held by Fez.
One thing to note, though, through this pit lane cycle is Chiral has lost about 6, actually, once you add it up, we're looking at probably about 8 seconds worth of time lost in the pit lane. And I know we probably lost about a second on board with Chiral in the pit lane there, but I think there might have been damage on that Mercedes-Benz machine, and that could spell trouble later in this race here with the number 44, probably picking up a little bit more pace if they had significant damage that they had to repair.
Yeah, and of course, you know, we're coming through lap traffic once again as we follow Fezfox, but then we take a look. I believe a couple of other drivers heading into the pits now, as we can see through the pits. The position's finally updating. Fez right now in collective 3rd, and I believe that will improve to 2nd, but I think we're just waiting on one other leader to pit, or one other on the lead group to pit, I believe.
I believe so, randomly up the order right now, sitting in no name corner at the moment with their Evo 2, has led the past 2 laps through this pit cycle, but will fall down, not the effective leader, but still in a strong enough position to be able to inherit that lead with our lead group pitting. And I believe they are one of only a few drivers yet to serve their mandatory pit stop. Flip Flop Dog, another driver still yet to serve their mandatory pit as well, that we would see up near the front, but otherwise the majority of our drivers up in that front group have served their mandatory pit stop.
Yes. we take a look, Saber here right now, just coming through, looking good at the moment. We can see how long the difference. Their last lap was a 3-minute 46-second lap, and that's just how much time you lose going through the pit lane.
Yeah, it's a lot of time to lose, but of course, Fez Fox actually has 0.2 the better on Saber's fastest lap. Kyril actually with the fastest lap of the race as well, so we could see a little bit of a reversal of this podium position right now. Kyril, of course, needing to catch this gap back up to the lead. I believe losing a little bit more time to Fez Fox directly in front of him as well. So going to be a very tall order coming in from that Mercedes. Maybe just needing a little bit more time to get those tires up to temperature, but Fez is really going to be pushing up to the rear end of Saber, especially when traffic starts to play a part. That is Fleechy, who's going to be pulling over to the side and allowing Saber by. But that's going to be Fez licking his chops, trying to pull up that much closer. And that's just a couple tenths that you get for free. And especially depending when you catch them as traffic, that could be even more time gained, as it looks like it might be exactly that. Coming down the run towards Eau Rouge Radion, yeah, Fleechy actually letting them by, so it looks like Fez would have gotten a little bit of benefit from the draft and also pulled up a little bit closer. So this could be a battle that starts to erupt in the next couple of laps here.
Yeah, taking a look at the times again, Saber just did, I believe, a 2:18.5, only 0.2 away from their best. That was with that traffic, too, coming right across the start-finish line, but I mean, as you said right now, Fez is a couple of tenths faster on their fastest lap. And, of course, gaining, as we see, I believe, one of the lap cars giving way. I believe that's the number 13. That's the Evo 1 Lambo, I believe.
I believe our Evo 1 Lambo is going to be Raleigh, who is currently
gotcha.
a little bit further, actually in the pits right now. So all the other Lambos are Evo 2s. So directly in front, that would be an Evo 2, one of the newer models for our grid, or actually directly behind now. But yeah, Saber able to get past, and it looks like that is going to be a position just returned under blue flags and not going to really cause much issue. You see them going a little bit wide in pit path just to stay out of the way of Fez. But regardless, I think the dirty air actually causing the number 86 to lose a little bit of time as we take a jump on board here with MNU underscore, who is actually chasing down Raph for P21 right now. The two Mercedes starting to fight each other, and also a little bit of damage on the front end of the number 21 trying to fight for P21. So we roll through the bus stop, but look at that traction coming from MNU underscore. The low speed just looking phenomenal on that Mercedes, and that's going to prove a real challenge for Raph, especially once you roll through the more technical sectors. Just that number 21 is having a little bit more grip, as we see Fox actually also picked up a stop go 30 as it's appearing on my timing screen. So super unfortunate from then, as well as I believe Zzors. I'm seeing a couple drivers that's serving those in the pits, so a couple drivers falling back as MNU underscore is trying to move their way up. And actually, through that pit cycle and overtaking a couple cars, has moved up to P20 as we see a Porsche overtaking in the front there, just causing a little bit of issues, and they're going to be holding their line, heeding to that blue flag, allowing these two drivers through. That's going to open the gap up for Raph just a little bit more, allow him to open that gap. And now MNU's just got to push up that much harder. And it is worth noting, though, actually wasn't a blue flag for that Porsche. That Porsche is for position in this very battle. So once that Porsche gets their tires up to temperature, brand new set of rubber, they could be the one trying to dominate this battle.
And we can see here, this is for positions right at the top 20. MN underscore actually getting a couple coming through the pits, as of course that Porsche now is 20th. And you know, you take a look at what we saw before with Saber and I believe Kyril. You know, that Mercedes just really can be nicely planted if you get that speed right into that corner. Nice coming out is, ooh, it's a little wide there, but you know, we saw MN underscore making the attack on Raph, and with that a little bit of not traffic but a battle for position is, whoa, goes a little bit inside there. It's Starvelo, but manages to keep it intact there. But we can clearly see Emin underscore trying to gain just every position he can.
Yeah, quite a few scares from MNUs. We saw the 21 got loose in Stavlo. We also saw them get loose in Blanchimont in practice. So have to imagine that car is trimmed out to the very edge of adhesion and the edge of control, trying to get any advantage they can, and especially with Raf directly up front, giving a little bit of dirty air, just going to make that car a little bit sketchier, because while that dirty air is taking air off of the nose of the car, it's also taking air off the rear. So it tends to exaggerate any balance issues that you might have. If you have a little bit of oversteer, it tends to make you oversteer maybe that little bit more, but also struggle to get the front end. And I think that might be exactly what MNU is struggling with as they try to roll up to the rear wing of the 25. And Raf is just able to hold in front just by basis of track position right now.
Yeah, but Raf, I think, got a horrible exit out of Radon. As you could see, Emin underscore giving a little peek to Raf there coming into the chicanes. And, I'm not sure if Raf would be able to hold off Emin underscore for much longer, but as we know, just the track position here is pretty strong as long as you can defend through the corners.
Absolutely, but there are still plenty of places to overtake regardless, because you can easily get yourself into the inside of one corner that turns into the outside of next. And so defending ends up being quite a strategic battle. Plenty of these corners, piff-paff, lead one into the other and then to the other direction immediately after, allowing for drivers to be side by side. If you're able to hang around the outside of Bruxelles, you'll immediately benefit from trying to get to the inside of No Name. And it gives you all sorts of different ways to fight. And if the driver in front defends one way, there always is a second way around, as long as you can find a way to make it work. But actually, looking down the order on my timing page, we may have a big battle for third, as I think Cairo made a mistake. They're coming down through Puan right now. And I believe Thatcher is now trying to take P3, as well as being chased by Dipping Sauce in P5. And so we have a 3-car battle for the final step of the podium here.
Yeah, so we can take a quick look as we go through the orders. These are sliding a little bit there, but here we are with the battle, the 3-way battle right now. Cairo up in front, and yeah, you can see Cairo and P4 and P5 right behind. They're close together, and with the traffic, we'll see how they can manage going forward.
Yeah, and Cairo, it seems to have been struggling on those tires currently. I think possibly the tire pressures may be falling out of window. Unsure how temperatures have changed, if they've increased or decreased, but maybe just causing that Mercedes to be a little bit out of the window that it needs to be in right now. And that Ferrari and BMW really taking advantages. Look how much better they are under braking. And Cairo losing time through the bus stop as well through the later phases, unable to get the car turned in how they need to. So Thatcher really starting to put the pressure on. It's going to be eyes forward, and look at the BMW a little bit deep under brakes, almost rear-ending the 102 Ferrari, who has to be licking their lips right now, just tasting that podium champagne, because this Mercedes seems to be wounded and stricken from any type of pace, and that 102 has been hounding them the past lap and a bit, trying to sneak away past. It is worth noting that for a moment Thatcher was able to get ahead earlier. I was able to take a peek back, but Danny was able to sneak back up the inside of Bruxelles. So this is not just a case of one driver struggling. It's actually the Ferrari goes around. Thatcher is into the wall, and Lacomb's the rear end coming out, and I think maybe just the too much trail brake pulling the rear end. I'm unsure what happened, but I think the Ferrari just lost the rear. It looked like it just snapped out.
Yeah, it looked like it snapped out there, and the thing is, the Mercedes looked like it was about to lose it too. That was loose going into the chicane, but maybe a little bit of overcorrection trying to avoid, or a bad reaction, and just like that, you're into the wall. And I just want to note, Danak here having a nice quiet race here. He's up to P5 after starting quite a bit ways down.
Yeah, quite an impressive gain. Is taking a look at it on my timing table really quick. Danak is up, well, from the pit phase, only 2 positions. Of course, now it's not going to tell me exactly the info I want. But I believe Danak had started around the P20 area, so to be sitting on the fringes of a podium. Quite a big change in position. And oh yeah, just looking back at it on my own side of things, looked like Thatcher just maybe a little bit too deep on the brakes coming into Lacombe, trying to pull the car back with the brakes, and then a little bit of assistance from the curb and trying to rush back, just sent the car around, and nothing they could do once that rear end was loose, because that wall comes up way too fast to make any kind of save.
Yeah, and then so as we come back here, we have Dipping now going to be making a run to Cairo here. And as you can see, I mean, Cairo was really starting to feel the pressure. Before that spin with Thatcher, Cairo was really shaky going into that chicane there, that first chicane after that long straight of Radillon. So just if managing to pile on the pressure, if Dipping can get close enough, Dipping may be looking at a top 3 spot. But Cairo's not going to give it up easy.
No, not at all. But also, Denak, who we mentioned earlier, is slowly reeling the pair in. Able to push a little bit more pace out of that Ferrari than the cars directly ahead, as Danny has been close to matching, but Denak able to push up just a little bit closer in the previous couple of laps. That could be a spell danger, especially if traffic plays a factor. Because all it takes is traffic will go wrong way once, you lose a second, and immediately you're under threat from the cars behind. And I mean, just speaking of that, we see traffic directly ahead of Cairo. That big slide coming from that Mercedes, and maybe that's why those tires aren't too happy. Perhaps a little bit of graining, but we see traffic directly ahead of Danny. They're just barely coming off screen as we switch to them for each camera, and that could spell danger, because that dirty air is certainly playing a part about a second back right now. And yeah, the Mercedes is just struggling to get into the corner, and that's just letting this BMW reel them in. Denak having already gained half a second on this lap alone. So this could be a fruitless effort by Cairo if they aren't able to get on top of these tire wears, or this tire right now, because they seem to be almost losing control in every corner.
Yeah, it's looking real bad. And just a note, when we went back to the battle between Cairo, Thatcher, and Dipping, Cairo had a 2-minute and 30-second lap. And that was what it took to basically battle for P2 to now trying to defend to drop from the podium, possibly even the top 5, as I believe that's Fane. And Dipping has to take almost nearly evasive action, almost spinning, manages to hold that, which actually gives Cairo a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah, and if anything, that's not going to start to put Dip under pressure. While they are past Fane, who is that that lap car, Denak's now gained on both of these cars, who've had to get past Fane in quite a disadvantageous spot. Plus, of course, Denak is going to be pulling underneath that rear wing up the Kemmel straight, getting a little bit of benefit of that slipstream. So this gap is just continuing to close up, but with only 12 minutes left in this race, a little bit under that, time is running out. So Dipping Sauce needs to start to roll up and get a move on with this. Yes, the traffic is going to aid you, but it's not going to save you. So it is going to be time to start putting the afterburners on, take that last little bit of life out of the tires, especially now knowing that Cairo's been taking the life out of theirs. This could be an opportunity for you to get onto that podium, as we see lap traffic further up the road, possibly being an issue for Cairo.
Oh, and they're making contact too. I believe that's Marshall and one of the BMWs there, and it's caused a almost accordion effect, as now Dipping is right at the back of. It's trying to make a move. Oh boy, Dipping's right in the back of Cairo right now. Line of stern coming through right now, down into, I believe, the second chicane there after double gouache. Oh my goodness, that was a turn of events.
Yeah, and that means Dipping Sauce is going to be right on the rear. Denak gaining a second on both of them in that little altercation as well. So the number 44 is going to be looking in their mirrors, and they're going to be filled by the BMW. And that's a very imposing car to have in your rear view mirror, because that fills up all of it. No matter how far back they are, you can always see that machine just looming over the horizon. And that We've seen how much stronger that BMW is under brakes, and that's going to be a crucial advantage for the 38 here, trying to reel in the Mercedes. But we've seen Cairo stretch that advantage a little bit more now, just able to get on top of the car a little bit better. And also in the background there, you see Denak, that Ferrari, has gotten past a Wushel, who was that lap car, who has almost helped stir this up, as every one of these cars now, within about 2.5 seconds of each other, really starting to put the pressure on one another, and another lap car just looking to cause havoc for Cairo, who's certainly going to be... There's certainly going to be some choice words coming underneath that helmet right now for every car that keeps getting placed on the nose of that Mercedes.
Yeah, but I think the biggest thing right now for Cairo is to just keep their head down, keep racing, make the best moves you can. I've been in situations where I've been in faster classes, and I've had 2-3 wides in front of me, and I've had, guys for position behind. You cannot let the red mist descend, especially in these moments. You need to hold and hit your apexes and hit your lines, and just let the race come to you. Sometimes the traffic is going to make you seem like it's frustrating, and it's going to catch up the driver ahead, but as long as you can keep it in the apex, you keep your nose clean there, you're gonna end up on top. And that's what Cairo's hoping right now, as he's now making their way through traffic. Dipping sauce too, but I believe the one who's personally benefited of this the most is Denak. Denak being pretty far behind, the traffic just giving him all the more reason to catch up and make this a three-way battle.
Absolutely. It's quite a big change of time, actually, bringing both of them all the ways back in. But Denak's, we've seen Denak challenge some cars late in the race before. 8 minutes left here. This could be a massive challenge or a massive ask, because we see a car going a little bit wide there.
That's Zizor's going a little wide.
Yeah,
but that's going to cause Denak maybe to hold firm. Oh boy, coming out of the exit there. Now, well, as we were saying, it's a give and take game. Denak, personally benefited from the 2 wide from Cairo, but here just having to slow and lift a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of time lost coming from Denak, and that gap having opened up to 3 seconds to the rear of Dipping Sauce. So perhaps about a second loss to the BMW in front. But 7 minutes to go, that gap remains about the same between Dip and the Mercedes of Cairo. And that's, they're about matching lap times within a couple tenths of each other. Denak having lost about 3/4 of a second because of that little moment. At least guessing by lap times, but we're starting to see that BMW struggle a little bit. Traction control having to kick in, as we saw the BMW getting a little bit loose, and that's going to hurt them down this entire run down the main straight here. And that's going to also damage those tires a little bit more, as we see a car spun at the top of Radion, giving another scare. Yellow flags going over the crest there is the last thing you want to see. But Cairo on the flashers, just trying to get this McLaren out of the way and possibly even park it for...
Oh, that wasn't good!
Big tap for Cairo, going all the ways around. And that is the McLaren. I'm unsure of which McLaren that
I believe
is.
that's Katie. That's Katie Timberfox that just stuck in the corner, was trying to give way more for Cairo, but it just did not work out.
And that's going to forfeit P3 to Dipping Sauce. Denak also sneaking by, so Cairo getting demoted to 5th due to that contact. And that could also even have put damage too, because look at the side of that car. There's a lot of scuffs and bruising that could have put that car out of order. And that's probably going to spell the end of the podium contention from Cairo here. Dipping Sauce probably almost jumping for joy, because it seemed like that BMW was just starting to fade. And Denak, of course, inheriting that position as well. The last thing you want to see is contact going to the column there with a lap car. Very, very easy to make that happen, too. It almost feels like a one-wide corner. And Danny was just trying to force his way past and rush past traffic. Unfortunately, seems to have bit him in the rear a little bit, as that lap car was doing what they could to stay out of the way. But I think, in all fairness, the 44 might have been asking a little bit too much from that far back.
Yeah, looking at it, coming that far back and trying to cut into the apex there, Katie Timberfox was already coming into the corner, at least trying to give as much way as they could, but just could not make it work or get all the way clear. And you really, Katie couldn't go anywhere else unless they really just held on the brakes and just lost even more time. But you got to be more, aware, and it's just sometimes that happens. Maybe the call was clear right when you came into the apex and there was the nick right at the right rear quarter panel. It happens, but you just got to keep, that's just why you got to keep your head down and just keep racing. It's not over yet.
Absolutely, it's not over yet. With 5 minutes left to go here, too, though, we're going to see probably about 3 laps coming through, depending when the leader takes the flag. Of course, our leader still being Saber Kitsune, but they're under pressure from Fez 2.5 seconds down the road, and don't think the times are going to be any improvement, though, as Fez has set the fastest lap of the race last lap out. But again, I don't think overall that this is going to be a challenge that's going to be able to happen as we take a look through some of our other cars on the grid. There's Fez Fox trying to chase down Saber. That gap now is coming down to 2 seconds. So good possibility that this will run out of time. 3.5 minutes left to go, so we're probably going to be 2 laps to go at the line. I don't think Saber's going to catch it with a white flag. So plenty of mistakes that could happen, especially with the traffic. We've seen traffic cost people a second and a bit multiple times before, as we see traffic coming right now through Blanchimont going side by side. That's going to throw Saber a little bit off and cost a tiny bit of time as well, but able to get past traffic and cleared. Fez will probably catch the traffic on the straightaway here. But more traffic directly ahead of Saber. So last thing you want to see is just more and more cars just filling your windscreen as you're trying to pull away and lead this race. But 3 minutes at the line. So we are going to get 2 more laps to go. Saber's having to go for a little bit of a dive to take the inside of the GTR. I believe that is going to be Dust in the number 99, who's going to heed way to both Saber and I imagine on the straightaway here Fez. That gap hovering around right about 2 seconds. Saber hanging on for dear life right now.
Yeah, you can see now Saber is pushing it all on the line. You got 2 laps to go. You need to put the pedal to the metal here. Still, though, you got to make sure you manage that traffic well. As we saw with Cairo, if you don't, that could be the end of your race, or at least the lead.
Yeah, most certainly. And you want to make a smart move. It looks like Fez in the back had actually had a little bit of an off track, just barely caught that at the top of Radion, possibly avoiding traffic. Didn't see what happened. Is Saber with a big slide and a great save through Bruxelles and trying to follow that Aston. But we talked about that 992 seemingly destroying its tires. Well, I think that could be evidence of that. All it takes is a little bit of dirty air from that Aston Martin in front, and that could spell the end of the race for Saber if that goes wrong. So Saber needing to get this car back underneath them. It looks like it's mostly under control now, but a little bit of warning sign that that car's ready to bite, and it's not over till you cross that line.
Almost an incident with the lapped Aston Martin there, but manages to keep it together. And as you saw before, I mean, the last thing you want to do now is scrub and get all those temperature in your tires. You want to maintain the gap. You want to make sure you still have that cushion. But if you go too hard, as we saw that huge slide, that's not going to do you any favors.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the last thing you want to do towards the end of the race is spin and not have the time to recover it and recover the positions that you might have lost, improve your pace. While Saber's had quite a strong race leading up here, it is very easy to throw that all away by just getting a little bit too greedy. But the gap now has opened all the way up to 3.5 seconds due to a little bit of favorable traffic for Saber. And the last lap should be starting here with 40 seconds crossing the line. And yeah, there you go. You hear the line or the audio cue kick in as this is the final lap of the race for your race leader. And directly behind him, Fezfok now closing that gap to about 3.2 seconds. Maybe a little bit out of touch to try to put on some kind of challenge. But that is going to be the course of the race for those two. We also still have a couple battles going on down the grid. Sefi also challenging Wushel and a couple other cars throughout, just trying to get small battles for positions, but no one really any closer than our lead battle here, other than maybe a battle for P8 with Suzuka and Sergel. So most of our drivers seemingly sorted themselves out here, as Saber now has to just reel in one more tour of the circuit and bring the car home. And we've seen this Bruxelles corners be a little bit of a challenge, but very easily can roll through here and give up a tiny bit of time and just bring it home. You know you have the gap.
Yep, and I see Saber's definitely taking it easy through Brussels there. I mean, I would too after having a Code Brown going through that. And, you know, we can see he's sliding that Porsche, but keeping it nice, well-maintained and under control. You just need to get it through the corners and across the line. There's no need for heroics right now. You have the gap. You just need to take your foot off the throttle maybe a little bit more and just maintain your pace. He's got this if he can get through it, but you know, as we can see, the struggles through all the drivers throughout this course, from the turn one, to the initial incident through Rouge and Radion, to now we see, you know, the tires wearing out. I mean, an overall experience so far for all of the drivers, just a good rounded effort for those that, you know, were in here and kept to the end. But Saber now coming down through, going into Blauschamar after this, is going to be taking the checkered flag here, and it's been an absolute gorgeous race for him.
Well, I was unsure that you could get a checkered and a white flag, as
yeah,
a little bit contradictory between each other. But Saber, nonetheless, is going to come through the final two corners and just needing to get the run out one last time, able to keep it in line, and it is going to be the checkered flag for Saber, taking P1 in our one-off welcome race. Fez going to be filing in behind the gap, 3.9 seconds, able to close that gap a little bit, but too little, too late. But further down the order, Dipping Sauce is also coming under pressure from Denak and Cairo. Both of the drivers have actually caught up, so I think there might have been an incident for Dipping Sauce. So one more hard braking zone into the bus stop, and that's going to be Dipping Sauce trying to just feed the car through, as we see Danny going a little bit deep into the final corner, but Dipping Sauce going to take that final spot on the podium, and actually, I believe, going to win our Silver Cup as well with that. Denak P4 taking P2 in the silver class, and Cairo, who's going to fall afoul of that unfortunate incident with the lap car and finish up in P5. We're going to see a couple other drivers coming across the grid. Thatcher in P6, Blumlaut P7, Suzuka in a battle with Sergel, who is now in P8 and 9, as they have sorted that out, and Orez finishing out the top 10, coming back off of the silver championship. Quite a strong result from them. As we'll read these off as the rest of our drivers come across the line. Luna now in 11th, followed by Azure Goat, able to take in P12. Further down the order, I believe Newt now is actually with some penalties. A couple of drivers got moved around. Newt's moved up to P12. Oh,
yeah,
no, sorry, just a driver leaving, messing up the timing tables.
I see.
Newt finishing P12. Blade Wolf P13, Blade Wolf P14, Oro Zephyr P15, I believe having already finished, followed by Randomy in 15th. 16th is going to be S Spirit. 17th is going to be Raph with that carbon black Mercedes. And then we have 18th and 19th and 20th, Sephi and Zephyr. Just a couple of our drivers. The timing screen's going crazy as drivers come in and out of the server as these races finish out. But overall, top 20, finishing out with decent races and seeming like really stay out of trouble, and you'll find yourself in a good spot. Quite a chaotic race, especially with the start of the event. With that big incident at the top of Radion, collecting about 7-8 cars, certainly proving where that first lap survival skill comes in, as we see Quinn coming in 29th and finishing out our drivers that I believe were live on track. I believe everyone else here has already finished, with the only exception being Casp, who's actually right behind them, needing to cross the line still.
Yeah.
So last driver finishing out their race, P34 for Cass. Not the race they would have wanted, but mostly picking up damage and causing their race to fall foul right at the start. A very, very tricky and chaotic race, that's for certain. Having picked up so many cars many of our drivers, probably the biggest grid that they've ever been part of, showing where just trying to survive can really pay dividends. And even some of our more veteran drivers getting caught out by just the amount of cars on track. But good showcase for many of our new members coming in. And I think maybe a changing of the guard with some of the new drivers able to showcase their pace.
Yes, it's overall good race all around. And to make a small, slight comment, even the broadcasting team, myself, getting caught out a bit. Just how many drivers there were today, but overall, I mean, the racing was there all around, no matter where you looked. If it was for, the lead between Saber and Fez, and then we had the top three dipping, Cairo and Denek, and then, all the way down to the bottom, we saw a couple of good AM battles through there, and it just, everyone putting on a good show, and it looked like everyone had a ton of fun, and it's just what you want to see. It's exactly what you want to see in an event like this, Plasma.
Exactly. It's certainly going to be a good introductory for a lot of our drivers who are going to be trying to come in for the first time to one of our events and showcase themselves. We saw good battling when we were able to get the cameras on people. Unfortunately, technical issues giving us the forever lovely problems when you would least expect them. Everything seems fine in practice, and then things go ahead and break. But when we were able to get on with people, it did seem like we were able to get good battles. I mean, at certain points, midpoint of the race, there was 5 or 6 battles going on right before the pit phase, and just people trying to sort each other out. So we take a look through our final order here. Only really a couple drivers not able to finish out. I believe really just from the outside the top 40 are only really retirements or drivers suffering catastrophic damage. So most of our drivers making it all the way to the end here. Applause to all of them, especially with such a big grid. And definitely happy to see plenty of our drivers come through from start to finish as we take a look at our class standings as well for the finale or final laps here. Again, some of our national drivers are mixed in here, but for the most part, this will be our general standings. Newt, I know, winning AM is an AM driver, so but Oro Zephyr is one of our nationals, that Spirit as well, so it would be a provisionally Newt, Raf, and Sephi who would get thrown into that AM class podium there. But congratulations to our top 3 there. And of course, we saw coming across the line, Silver. Many of many familiar faces we saw with our most recent Silver Championship, Dipping Sauce, popping back into a race for the first time in a while, taking P1, followed immediately behind by one of our championship contenders in Denak, and of course, Suzuka not far behind, taking that final podium spot in class. So certainly no lack of excitement, just too many things to get our eyes on, and it's certainly something I'd look forward to with the next championship now that we have a little bit of a break to prepare for the next series coming up.
And then, of course, our timing strain, Blum being the only national, but yes, as we see, some of them mixed up in AM, but yeah, it's, again, a great race overall. Everyone, they went out there, they put it on the line. It was amazing to see.
Yeah, it was definitely a tricky race for certain, but happy to have it. And I look forward to being able to run a full season. I don't know what's coming up next, but I can imagine we will see something maybe with a 1-week break, maybe a 2-week break. I'm unsure exactly what timelines we'll be looking at, but in the very near future, we're going to be having a race. Until then, if you would look to try to race with us, or if you want to just follow along, feel free to join our Discord or follow the socials below in the description. We're more than happy to welcome any new member, any skill level, from absolute professional to brand new to racing sims as a whole. Feel free to join our community, and we'll be more than happy to welcome you for racing or just as a community environment. Until then, my name's Plasma. I'm signing off. This has been a Simufur one-off championship race. Thank you, and I'll see you again.
Yep, it's Paliku'i signing off as well. You guys all take care. Have a good one.